Well, welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katie McDonald and I'm an assistant professor of architecture here at the UVA School of Architecture. This fall, I'm coordinating ARC 7010, which is a core graduate studio centered on topics of housing and healthcare through the lens of the body. And so in developing this studio, it was kind of immediately apparent that OFIS Arhitekti would be an ideal practice to study and to share with the students. So today I'm delighted to introduce OFIS, and I'll start by sharing a little bit about their work. OFIS, established by Rok Oman and Špela Videčnik in 1996, is a leading international practice whose work has spanned stadiums and hotels to chapels and mountain shelters. And importantly, through the lens of our studio, has routinely returned to multifamily housing as a typology, from high-end hotels to social housing. OFIS is based in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and Paris, France. Both Rok and Špela graduated from the Ljubljana School of Architecture and the Architectural Association in London. Since its creation, the practice has been investigating space relations in different scales and contexts. Much of their work results from winning competitions, including a student residence on Route des Petits Ponts in Paris and a football stadium in Bate Arena in Belarus. They have received numerous recognitions for their design work, including the European Grand Prix for Innovation Award, Young Architect of the Year Award, London, Core 77 Design Build Award, AIA New England Design Award, and the Golden Pencil Award, among others. Their academic research combines different interests and curiosities. They investigate European and local Slovenian identity in contemporary architectural language, which includes traditional knowledge of vernacular buildings into revitalizations, conversions, and new built work in the Alpine region. Špela and Rok run studios and workshops at various schools of architecture, including ENSA, Paris, Val de Seine, the Ljubljana School of Architecture, the Architectural Association. In 2021, they are visiting faculty at UCLA in Los Angeles. And in fact, I first came to know Rok and Špela at Harvard, where they continue to teach, most recently teaching a studio entitled Spaces of Isolation, Bridges Between Home and Healthcare, which certainly ties into the themes of the fall 7010 course here. As a student in Rok and Špela's Habitation and Extreme Environment Studio, back during my time in graduate school, projects scaled from the design of an off-grid shelter, which was later realized, to multifamily housing. This pedagogy was typical of Rok and Špela's teaching and characteristic of the type of work that OFIS produces. From furniture to urban strategy, OFIS seamlessly integrates the design language of each project across scales, forming clear bonds between body, building, and site, uniformly thoughtful and thought-provoking from gesture to detail. Perhaps the best way to demonstrate their approach is to see the work. Špela, we at UVA are thrilled to welcome you here tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to present, unfortunately not in person, but I'm sure one day we will meet. Thank you very much. It was a very nice introduction. And yes, I will also show in my lecture tonight, it's quite late here, it's 8 p.m. already in Slovenia. The work that we did, the work of Katie, Friedrich, and Erin, and the rest of the work that basically characterizes our office the way we are, and also the way offices like ours work, mostly in Central Europe, because I think it's quite different from the States. And I think maybe it's interesting for you to know how basically things work. So I will start just with this little image because I think it's important for you to know where we come from. Slovenia is a very small country. We only have 2 million people, not in the city of Ljubljana, but in the whole country all together. So it's a very, very tiny country in the border between Italy, Austria, Hungary, and Croatia. So it was really characterized by the cultures of all these three countries. So we have a little bit of Austro-Hungarian character and also a kind of heritage. We have a little bit of Italian and of course Roman history. And then also coming from South, we have a little bit of Balkan character. So all this characterizes us and also I think our culture and work. The other thing that is important, I think also connected with our work is that even if the country is so small that basically there is 1 hour to each side to the border of the country by car, but also there is 1 hour to arrive to a very different climate and also a very different countryside. That we have the sea, we have the very high mountains and also the flat land. So the country and its kind of relief is very, very diverse. And I think this is something that characterizes us somehow. Also, what was important for our practice is independence. We were part in Yugoslavia when Rok and myself were very young, but later during our studies, we got independent and our office started really in that time of transition from Yugoslavia to Slovenia. And I think this was also one of the important reasons why we were able to establish the office so young and start to build so young. So of course, what also characterizes us are ups and downs through this long career we had from the beginning. We had a lot of ups and downs in terms of how much work we had, but also in terms of finance and everything. But it's something that makes you grow and makes you kind of also projects different. So our first project, Rok and myself, we met at the School of Architecture in the first year, and we were put together to work on one project as two young students. And somehow we got, well, as working couple, we are in private life, of course, we have each our own family, which is very good. But in a way, we are together since basically 92 when we met. And already at the end of our studies, we entered several competitions. In Europe, most of the work offices get, especially public work, is through entering competitions. In those years when we started, you could enter competition even if you were like office without a really big background or financial statements or kind of a big portfolio. It was not relevant who you were. You entered the competition, and if your project was something that the jury liked the best, you won it. So basically, at the end of our studies, we won 3 major competitions. One of them was this little extension and renovation of the old palace, which lies in the historical city center of Ljubljana. And for the first project, it was really a very, very complex task, because they were digging under the palace and on the courtyard of the palace. And through this excavation, they were looking for the historical ruins that they knew they will find, but they didn't know which one of them will be important to keep. So basically, we worked with all these archaeologists, like historians, conservatory people, and so on, to renovate the palace. So it was really, really hard work for a young architect like us. Like here I show the underground of this palace, where you can see the piece of Roman road, and then on the other side there is the Baroque ruins of the old palace. And then here on top there is today's Ljubljana, and under the road there is prehistorical graves. So all these layers were found, and we connected them with curvy kind of landscape-like courtyard architecture, so that every visitor of the museum could stand on these ruins where they were found and on which level they were found. So I think this our first project somehow, so this is the extension and this is the old palace, the way it is renovated, and the museum of course operates still, and it's a kind of kind of a very attractive building inside Ljubljana old historical center, kind of social kind of gathering. So this part of curvy and landscape connected buildings characterizes part of our work. This is one of other projects that are my favorite projects from the office. It's a very, very small chapel, farewell chapel. In Slovenia, we have this kind of tradition that when someone passes away, you do a long walk until he's brought to his last place of rest. But before that, people, family, and people from the village, they gather in the courtyard to say goodbye. So basically our chapel, in a way, it's a retaining wall that holds the cliff, the soil, and the hill which is behind, also hides all the little service spaces that are needed by the graveyard, even the garbage, storages, toilets, and so on and so on. But in the heart of the space, there is a little chapel. So you can see here from the top view, the roof with the cross, and then the courtyard, which in a way, it's a very simple, low budget retaining wall building. So another project from this series I would just like to mention quickly is a small museum. We call it Habitable Space Wheel. It's a project we did 4 offices together from Slovenia. We are like 4 or 5 offices in our country that are from the same generation. And also most of us, they went to study abroad and then came back to Slovenia and started the praxis more or less at the same time. So we are in a way friends, but also in a way competitors. And this was a very interesting project. It was an invited competition for a museum of a very special guy, Herman Nordung, he was called. And he was the first guy in the 19th century to write books and research how you can survive in space. So basically he was drawing these sketches of a habitable wheel, and this was, by his opinion, the way how you can live with the gravity. But his work is very important. It was basically used as sketch to design for Kubrick movie Odyssey, but also for NASA and for the Russian part, designing space crafts. They were basically using some of his sketches and some of his theories. So he lived in this small village in the really nowhere, at the sun kind of last pocket of Slovenia. And we demolished the old community center and made this new building, which partly is a community center here in the middle, partly is a small museum and a research center devoted to his work. So this is the building in the middle of this nice village. And what is actually important here was a kind of structural strategy. The idea, of course, was to somehow redesign this habitable wheel that somehow lands in the beautiful landscape of this village. And also, when you walk inside the museum, it was supposed to make kind of effect of the gravity. So in order to do that, we made it inclinate, the whole building, but also structurally, we wanted to achieve that the building in a way has this floating effect. In Slovenia, we have earthquakes, so designing buildings without big columns and walls, it's a big challenge for structural engineers. So here the structure basically are these very thin columns that are hidden behind the window frames, but the whole building in a way standing like a kind of strong cantilever concrete beam. It has 2 layers of the facade, because in one layer there is also a fire escape. So in the middle of the building there is this community hall that is used for the museum, but also for the villagers, for all the events that they have here. And of course we wanted to open it up to the sky so you can also see the stars and see the space. And then this is the museum with different exhibitions being held. And again, it's quite a low budget project. Like this piece, this exponent is more expensive than the whole building. So these are the small offices where you can be as a visiting researcher and study the work of Hermann Ordnung and the rooftop. So like Katie mentioned, we also did several projects of football stadiums. Football and sports stadiums are something that we really enjoy working on. And in particular, this one that we built, now we are doing the third one, but this was our second stadium that we built in Belarus. Belarus is a kind of ex-Russian republic, the last kind of republic where the president is still kind of, even they say totalitarian system. So it's a very, very strange world, even for us to come there and work. So the space they gave us is this field. It was an army camp, training camp, in the middle of kind of small forest by this town, which is called Borisov. And as you can see, the trees were already partly cut in this area because of the training facilities. So our idea was to create the building in the middle of that area where the trees were already cut, and also place parking inside the pockets where trees disappeared through the history. And we were inspired to do a kind of arena-like building from this kind of structure that appear in the nature. Mainly when we do sport buildings or kind of football stadiums, we try to create them as a kind of arena, kind of introverted area. It's important because in this way, the acoustic that you receive inside is very, very strong. They say that, for example, in this stadium, even if there are not too many audiences, you can basically hear the audience, you can hear the events much stronger than you would hear it if it would not be arena-like. So as you saw on the images, I ran fast to the movies because I will explain the project through this video a little bit. We did a shell around the building, and the shell is done by metal shingles. Can you hear me well? Because there is music, right? Yeah, okay, good. And you can hear the music, right? Okay, perfect. So the shell, as you can see, is made of these metal shingles. They call it shingles, and they were special and very hard to do, because the problem of Belarus is that they really protect their market, and they, in a way, allow only the local workers and the local elements and materials to be used in the buildings. And our shell is curved in all directions, so there was basically no company that could do this curvy structure. So we had kind of a problem. Luckily, somehow we got connected with a German company that produces old churches, like renovation of those old towers in the churches that have the onion shape, like the Baroque churches. And in a way, they were very, very impressed by the render of this building. And they somehow got connected with the government of Belarus and introduced that they could, in a way, collaborate with the local contractor. So this is what happened at the end, that these German guys, they imported just kind of knowledge, the know-how. They imported 2 engineers to be there to teach them how to curve and how to work, and they were also supervising the whole project during the construction. So as you can see, otherwise the stadium is quite simple. It's a metal structure and kind of concrete tribunes, and the big holes that are created keep the ventilated interior, so there is this kind of natural ventilation coming through the stadium, but also in the night you can see through what's going on inside, and you can basically have a sense of whatever activity is happening inside. What was also important for us later on when the building was built, we visited the area several times, and what we really like is in a way that we managed to create a public space outside this building. It's really a space to go now for the villagers, a kind of space where they go meet, you know, play, whatever, do the photos and so on and so on. And for us, this is very important and nice. It's something we didn't expect. Yeah, but it happens. So, okay. I will now go to a completely different types of projects. As Katie mentioned, we also did several multiple housing and a lot of affordable or social housing. And what they all have in common more or less is that normally we would already get a kind of fixed limited site where urban regulation were prefixed completely. And in a way you could only do a block of several floors, a kind of length and the width, and not really have much area where actually you could play or design or create something different. So these are all different blocks that we did in the past. Yeah, so basically the area where we found something where we thought we can do something more, explore and research and just create something more for the people who would live inside is this layer between the inside and the outside is the layer of the loggias, the balconies and terraces. So basically this is, for example, one of the first projects. It was a social housing. It was a competition that we won. It's by the sea of Slovenia, quite nice location. One of those housing is rentable, and the other one they sold through the lottery to some young families who couldn't afford to buy apartment. And we were inspired by this local multiple housing. And as you can see, the rich life is going on in these balconies, and people put all sorts of shading and protection for the fences and air conditioning and so on and so on. So what we said is, okay, let's do a balcony that would integrate all this already inside. So we made a cupboard where you can hide your air conditioning or your furniture. We closed sides so that you can be intimate and private on your balcony. We made shading that is integrated also inside the balcony. And this was then at the end the effect. So apartments inside are kind of simple and made according to the rules, to the law of Slovenia that is quite strict, the minimum standard each apartment needs to have. But actually what is added, what makes the building different, and also what each owner of the apartment can say, look, this is my place, this is where I live, is this area of the balconies. So we explore these loggias and balconies elsewhere as well. I mean, most of the housing we did, for example, like this one, kind of characterizes by these spaces. And I must say now, when we had this COVID situation, these balconies really showed as a very, very important part of the apartment, because it was the only place connection for a person between his own private space and the outside. On these balconies here in Europe, at least, people made concerts, they made gym, like all sorts of interactions between the neighbors and the outside and so on. So it really also to us proved that this is something that each apartment at least needs to have one. So I will now explain just a little project from this series of these apartments, which is this housing in Paris, in France. It's also a competition we won. It was the invited competition on a very narrow plot. For those who know Paris, it's very close to Parc La Villette. And it was built together with the area of a tram. So it's a narrow building between the tram garage, the remise, and the tram station. So inside this plot, we had to do 185 apartments, all the same for students, also all accessible for wheelchair people, and also apartments that needed to get some kind of green certificate. So since the site of each part of the apartment is very different, also the facades, as you will see later, varies. So on one side, we created balconies again, so it's a kind of intimate space again to each student. They can study here, they can be alone, they can concentrate on its study. But then on the other side, where they have entrance to their apartment, we created the corridors that are opened, that have natural ventilation and also natural light, and they are opened towards Paris and the football field, which is on the roof of this tram garage. And on these balconies, students can gather, have a beer, watch the football game, and so on. So I will now, again, these are the apartments, the interior, they're quite simple, all of them more or less the same. This is the kind of atmosphere of this loggia. And on the other side, as you can see, the view to the football field and this entry to each apartment. So for us coming from Slovenia, of course, it was not easy to work in France. When we won a competition, it was a big surprise. We didn't know anyone basically there, meaning it was not easy to find some office to associate. So what is good in Europe is that when you have a license in a certain country, you can also get license elsewhere inside the European community. So what we did is later we applied for license and we received it, and basically we just started the project ourselves. In Europe, most of the offices we lead projects from the very concept to the detail, and also we lead the construction site as architectural supervisor. This was also here in France. So in a way, it's very good because of course as an architect you are involved into each detail. Basically everything goes through your table, through your computer. It's not like you do just a concept design and then one commercial office develops the construction drawings. You are involved in every phase. And of course, in some way, that's also a very big responsibility, especially in France. It's like that, the contract you have with the client, you have to give them 10-year warranty, 10-year guarantee that anything that happens inside the building within 10 years after it's being operated, they call you, not the contractor, but you, and then you as a leader, as an architect, you must then seek with your insurance and with your lawyer who is guilty. So basically, if there is whatever, balcony leaking or shower leaking to the floor below, basically it all goes through you. So it's a very responsible task, but then on the other hand, makes it really possible to kind of control everything and the way things are being built. So here you can see through this movie kind of the way this building operates. As I say, it also received a green certificate, which was very important for the client, because already at that point, Paris had a rule that if you do, especially in public buildings, if the consumption of the energy is higher from what they allow, and it's very limited, very restricted, you have to pay much more tax to the city. So it was very important for us. We have very good windows, we have a lot of isolation, we have photovoltaics on the roof. Like I said, we have this natural light and natural ventilation of the corridors, of common spaces, but also each room, including the bathroom and the toilet, gets natural light and also natural ventilation. Okay, now I will move to another part of the project. It's something that is very important for us. Probably also it connects with that we are coming from this very small country, and also that we started to, visit United States quite frequently because of our teaching. And basically also got in touch with a lot of international students, also mainly Asian students. And what we really like to teach our students is that it's very important to kind of understand your heritage, where you are coming from, also the heritage of the location you are working on, and maybe get some inspiration from that, because that is maybe something that in this global world of architecture, when everything is so quick and everything is on Pinterest and Instagram and so on, is something that can make your architecture different from someone else. So what we really enjoy, both Rok and myself, we have a little house, a vacation house in the mountains, and we really enjoy studying this vernacular architecture, mainly in the Alps. But of course, as I showed you before, Slovenia has a lot of different buildings. And for example, this is one typology of building. It's called HAYRACK. It's kind of traditional buildings where they used to dry hay. And store all the equipment and everything. And each part of Slovenia has a different typology, different kind. Some of them are made of partly of stone, some of them are completely wooden, and so on and so on. And they have very, very interesting structure. But of course, a lot of this is already being demolished because it's an old tradition that was not kept anymore. So we did 2 or 3 renovations of old barns. Like for example, this one here is in one small village. And as you saw, it used to be like that, and it turned like that at the end, because inside there is an apartment now. So all the inside was kept, the structure, even structurally it was in a good condition. Just we got some kind of metal anchors that you don't see, but reinforce the building also earthquake-likes against earthquakes. But otherwise everything is cladded with a simple wood. It's the same wood, it's spruce, that is used in the furniture and also in all the other elements. And all the inspiration of the building, including the furniture, is taken basically by the local tradition. I will just show very briefly this video. I will maybe jump a little bit because we are maybe a little bit late. But as I say, it's important project in a way, because it defines most of the work that we tried to do in the Alpine area. It's really a tradition that goes for centuries, and you can really learn a lot from it. And we feel that it's important to show also to the local people that these buildings are something that needs to be respected. So all these buildings, of course, they were ventilated naturally for centuries, for like 200 years, 300 years. And the wood normally is in a very good condition because of this natural ventilation. It doesn't have any insects, nothing. So normally it's a very, very healthy building that doesn't need a lot of budget to create something like I'm showing here in this small video now. Okay, I will jump further. So taking inspiration from this, we created a lot of buildings around that area. For example, this is a social housing that again has balconies and loggias, and we take inspiration for structure of those balconies from these wooden hayracks. Or for example, this is a building also from the same area where we take the materials and the way it's cladded to create, again, it's a holiday apartment buildings with a small pharmacy on the bottom. And you can see the roofs. The roofs, we tried, inside the roofs, we tried to hide all the installations, all the chimneys, the air conditioning, and so on and so on. So basically the pitched roof also create a kind of mask for all these elements that are integrated inside. So this is this of the recent projects. It's a hotel, a refurbishment that just opened now in June. It's a hotel from this area. Was not very nice, and it was built. Basically, this was the first building, and then this was added, and then this was added, and so we got the building in this stage. It's a client that bought 3 hotels, very young client. He's 27 years old, one Bitcoin guy. So he bought 3 hotels in the area, and we are very lucky because we are doing 2 hotels from him. This one just opened now, and another one is we just got permits and is going to be constructed from March on. And that's a new construction. But here we decided to keep, because inside, in a way, it was healthy. In Europe, we talk a lot about a kind of carbon print, because concrete and ruins, when you demolish one building, really gives a big carbon print to the environment. So in a way, if you want to think green, and this client is the one who really wanted to have everything very, very green and environmental friendly, we discussed and we said, okay, we must keep the building and do the best out of it. So if you can see here, this building in the past didn't really have a dialogue between. So with just small interventions, we tried to connect the roofs. We added a dining room, we added some roofs, we opened up the lobby in 2 heights and so on. And in a way, we tried to integrate and kind of make a new curtain around this building. And again, earthquake, this building was completely not safe structurally. So what you can see here are basically frames that are added to the existing building. So it's a kind of spatial frame made partly of steel and partly of wood, mostly wood, and it embraces the building from the outside, so it creates a kind of structural stability. But then on the other hand, also to us, it allowed to do balconies again, and also open up the windows to have big panoramic windows to the view. So these are now the views of the entrance. And then from the other side, this spatial frame has this, like I said, earthquake stability. It creates balconies, but also inside some of those beams, the water, the rainwater drainage is hidden, some electrical installation, and so on and so on. So some of the elements are hidden inside this part. So the view from the lobby, like I explained, is double height. We also did the whole interior, and the furniture was created inside our office. Like, for example, these chairs that you can see here are made of felt, and this felt is made by recycled plastic bottles. So again, it's a story that we wanted to integrate. Then here, the lobby is created by a cladding that in a way represents the slate. The slate wooden boards were used to create roofs in the past in this area. So this is how it's done. And all the perforations, they are not only decorations, but these are inside here. We have the ventilation, the heating, and the cooling. So all the holes are in a way calculated, the percentage of the holes, together with a mechanical engineer who explained how many, how big, where they need to be. So they, and behind there is a machinery for the ventilation. So all these are these elements. Also we design lights the lights are also done by measure. So in a way, the chairs are done again by our office, and they are inspired by the local chairs that people used in the area. This is a little room, it's called countryside room, that each house in the past in this area had a small room with a stove, with a fire stove, and this is the tiles, the ceramic tiles of a traditional fire stove that was used. The corridors, of course, were very long, and they were there. So what can you do? We didn't demolish the building, like I explained. So we covered the corridors in kind of a print that is HAYRACK. So basically, the 3D print is a wallpaper on the wall and the carpet has the print. And in a way, when you walk through this corridor, these are two images, you walk like you walk through the HAYRACK. And in a way, we tried to show the tourists this kind of attraction, the traditional attraction we have, but also to the locals to show how they can, how they should actually respect what we have. These are the rooms, are quite simple. The shape of the mountains around and the lights that I explained, the balconies and the inside of the room, and so on. Here I will just jump. It's from the same, from more or less very similar area. It's a shopping mall. It's an older project. It's a shopping mall, and on top we have apartments. And again, like you can see, it's taking inspiration from a very local heritage. So now my last part of the lecture is about these small cabins, small units that we do inside the office as a kind of a research. This research more or less started when the construction crisis started in Europe. And at that time, we received funds. This was the project we did for immigrants. At that time, there was a problem in Europe, mostly with immigrants from Syria. And we got the task to create small units for them. But when we finished the project, the crisis was already gone. I mean, it's not funny at all. I mean, Turkey made a kind of contract with the European Union to stop all the immigration there. But our prototype stayed and it was built. And again, it's a research how to do the cantilevered structure with wood and with the traditional way of construction. And it's basically three elements connected. You can connect them vertically, horizontally, basically in each way you can. And this is the interior. It's a very minimalistic interior that the stairs are the shelves, great kitchen and so on. So it's a very simple cabin. It was exhibited in Milano, Fair of Furniture, but then also was standing as a kind of library in the castle of Ljubljana. It's called Library Under the Treetops, where the books were inside and you could borrow them and read outside in the grass. And also later it was, we were invited to exhibit it in London as a part of a debate, micro-living. And because in London, of course, there is a big demand for housing, for cheaper, more economic, more affordable housing. And this was in a way some kind of provocation if how small apartment can be. We sold it then on eBay, and today it is the money got donated to Architectural Foundation in London. And today it's actually standing somewhere in Scotland, and it looks like that. It's very different. We got these photos from the owner, and yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's completely different, but it's having a nice use. So one of those projects that we did is also this glass structure that it was a research how to survive in the desert in the glass house. So it was a commission from a glass house company called Guardian, And together with AKT, the structural engineers, and Transolar, it's a German sustainable office, we created this object that is still standing in the desert in Spain. And the desert really has very, very hard conditions, because here in winter there is snow, and in summer normally is plus 50 degrees. I will just go to the small video, because and I will explain the project. So basically the idea is that there is a triple glazing, and of course everything is modular, so you need to bring it and assemble on the site. That is quite complicated to build. So it has this kind of big wooden deck, and wait, I will stop here. And as you can see, the wood, the ceiling and the floor has double height, and these holes. So the glass is a triple glass, and it's entering inside this wooden ceiling and wooden floor, and through these holes you screw through, so that makes it stable. So that's why this building has no columns. Everything basically just stands on the glass. So basically there is no structure, just this comes on top, the glass goes inside, and you can screw it. The winds here in the desert, of course, they can be very, very strong. So the glass has special coatings. As I mentioned, there is triple glazing, and the coatings you don't see by your eyes, but when you have three coatings together, the sun ray doesn't really enter the interior, and that makes it, the interior doesn't warm up. Of course, the shade is also done by this big cantilevered roof, but they measured, and inside the building, apparently when there is plus 50 outside, inside you get, I'm talking about degrees centigrade, inside you get plus 28 only without the air conditioning. Of course, we also have an air conditioning because the building was later rented to different tourists, to different people, as a kind of a small retreat. There is a photovoltaic on top. Of course, there is no infrastructure here, so the battery is hidden under the floor, and also the water container is under the floor. When there is spring or fall, there is rain here, so you can get rainwater when we collect it inside. But in summer, when there is no rain, of course they bring water by truck, and they can fill up that container, which can serve 2 people for up to 1 week. And the sewage, of course, the canalization goes through self-cleaning sewage device. Okay. And then there is this Alpine shelter. I will just jump quickly because I will show the other shelter, which is also work of Katie. But I just want to show here that we were interested through our research to create really all sorts of cabins. This one in particular was made completely out of wood, and it was one building, one interior. For example, some other ones were made as combination of steel and so on and so on. And we are kind of trying and testing them, which one works and behaves better, either during the construction or during the installation or during its use. So these small projects, like Katie explained in the introduction, going from small scale buildings to some kind of aggregation to urban plan and so on, is also something we try to teach to students. For us, as you see, we are practitioners. It's important also to teach students in each seminar how the building actually could be constructed. So we really try that they develop the small scale buildings up to the bigger scale. Like I'm showing different projects, like for example, this is a project that we did in Manila with students a few years ago. It's, I mean, of course, each group had a different site in Manila and different program they found and created themselves. But in particular, this one was about kind of regenerating the area where informal settlers live and creating a kind of sanitary rules, creating sanitary knots with bathrooms and so on, and a strategy how slowly through time this area could be redeveloped by the people themselves. And also here in Manila, we created several structures one-to-one, and they were then later donated to the students. So my last project I would like to share with you is the project that was done in this studio, where also Katie was part of it. It was Alpine. It was a kind of a project where at the beginning, in a kind of workshop, students develop each one prototype of an Alpine shelter, and later on made aggregations how they could actually be placed as a kind of larger scale aggregation in Alaska. So we were lucky to basically, through this semester, we were looking for a potential site and potential sponsors, and somehow everything came together well. And one project was at the end chosen, and it was a project from Katie and her colleagues, Erin and Friedrich, who created this kind of aggregation of 3 elements with pitched roofs that you connect together. You can, in a way, lead them up in different elevations and so on. And each of these modules has somehow its own program, its own type of use. So as you can see here, the project is partly done in wood and partly in metal. So it has metal frames that connect, and on this way the wooden beams are connecting the buildings. And the building was, as other shelters we did, was completely built in a company somewhere, like in Slovenia. And then it was disassembled and brought to the site. So here you can see how difficult it is to see what levels the building should have. So these are, as you saw before, the shelter replaced one old shelter that stood before already. And basically here, one-to-one on the site, the alpinists were trying what are the heights of the terrain, of the existing terrain, but also trying how to create foundation. Because the rock is not always solid, the anchors must go down to the solid rock. The way you know how it works is that you make a hole and then you put water inside and you wait, and if that water disappears, it means that there is no solid rock. So you must dig more and more and more. So basically this kind of very simple rules of how you actually create and then building makes work. So the helicopters, they were like army helicopters that are limited in Slovenia. We have helicopters that can take up to such level only about 1,200, 1,300 kilograms. So that's why each of this module was not more heavy from this weight. And in a way it worked very well because the shape of the roof, of course, when you go up by helicopter, the air pressure somehow it's good for the air pressure, the shape of the roof. So in a way, I think it was like 3 hours when the whole assembly was almost finished, and then the building was standing there and just needed final cladding. The glass also works structurally. The glass was calculated. It was donated also from the same company, Guardian. And all the corners of the glass are very, very strong. So they also keep this horizontal loads of the wind, and the cladding is made by ecological cement tiles. So the interior, and I can also show a small movie. The building is really visited. I just explained Erin that just on Friday we got some very nice photo from a happy alpinist who spent the night there. So basically it's maintained very well, and you can visit it and sleep there free of charge. It's basically for free, this kind of buildings in Slovenia, and also they have them, I think, in Italy and Austria and Spain. You have this tradition of shelters that are taken care from volunteers. So luckily, very good volunteers take care of this building, so it's still in a very good condition. So these are some images from the installation. As I explained, the cladding was completely taken down from the prototypes. Also the glass, because it was too dangerous to bring the glass on the building. It might crash into the rock. Like very strong turbulence can appear in the mountains. You never know when they will. And when there is strong turbulence, the load on the helicopter just really swings. And that's a very dangerous part. So there were like 4 anchors for the ties. And as you can see, some of those ties are also hanging down. So the alpinists who are there, they hold that, and they must really put the shelter exactly on the position when anchors were prepared before, and all is put together. One rope broke during the installation, and luckily the structural engineer flight was late, so he was not there. We were asking ourselves what to do now, and they said, well, whatever, let's just try. It also went well only with three ropes. So Katie, I think you went to visit it by helicopter, right? Yeah, and Erin, I think Erin and Fred, they were taken up by alpinists. They were really, it was a little scary, right? Yeah. These buildings, they don't need heating. It's really warm also in the winter because it's very well isolated, and then after people enter, they get heated by a human body in a way. So they say that the Christmas and the New Year's Eve and all these nights in winter where they also spend inside are very, very cozy. So yeah, okay. So yeah, that's the end of my lecture for tonight. So thank you very much, and I'm ready in case you have any questions.